Hello and welcome back. So, today we're looking at The Lantern Keeper. It's a really beautiful, soothing 10-minute sleep story about a man, Elias, who carries this small lantern every night to bring a sort of gentle, watchful light to his seaside town. And, well, to the listener.
Yeah, let's just dive right in.
Okay.
I want to say, first, the core premise here is just so effective for a sleep story. The atmosphere is there, it's gentle, it's safe, and that central symbol, the small, intentional light versus the big, automatic lighthouse, that's powerful.
It's a great foundation.
A really solid foundation. But I think there's a huge opportunity here to deepen the emotional impact, specifically around Elias himself, without ever risking that tranquil feeling.
Right, and that's where the real power is, isn't it? In his backstory, the emotional weight of his character, especially that one profound line, "It helped me once," that offers a chance to subtly deepen the sense of shared vulnerability.
Without disrupting the sleep story. That's the key.
Exactly. The narrative right now, it intentionally uses this powerful withholding. It says his past pain is a story meant to rest quietly in the heart. And I get that. It preserves intimacy. It avoids any high draw, which is, crucial for a sleep script. But by stepping away completely from that experience, it kind of creates an emotional gap right when the listener is being asked to connect. To connect Elias's journey of finding hope to their own need for comfort.
Yes, it feels like a vulnerability is hinted at, but then it's sort of withdrawn, and that momentarily pulls you back from that feeling of a shared human experience.
If his entire mission is rooted in the fact that the light helped him once, the listener needs a little something, a tangible reason to believe in the depth of that original darkness.
Precisely. If we leave it too abstract, his mission feels less like empathy born from real experience and more like just a gentle but maybe slightly removed kind of service.
Okay, so the material needs to reinforce the authenticity of his commitment.
Yeah, so the suggestion for improvement here is not to reveal the specifics. We absolutely do not want a narrative flashback or anything like that.
No.
Instead, it's about infusing a brief, generalized metaphor, or maybe a sensory detail into the story, something that acknowledges the memory of his past need for that light.
So we're aiming for a resonant, empathetic anchor, but without introducing any narrative tension. I guess my one question, though, is if introducing any concept of past struggle, does that risk activating the listener's nervous system? The very thing a sleep story is trying to avoid.
That's a critical concern. It really is. And that's why the delivery and the language are absolutely essential. We have to avoid words like trauma or loss.
Right.
Instead, we focus on resilience, on the memory of contrast. We're not describing the storm itself, we're just describing the knowledge that this little flame survived it.
I see. So you keep the comforting feeling, but you give the listener one small, vivid anchor to believe that Elias truly gets it, that he knows what it means to be lost and then found.
Exactly. That framing changes everything. It's about the resilience of the flame, not the damage of the storm.
Okay, so let's talk about what that could actually look like. Concretely, we could suggest describing the texture of the light itself when Elias is looking at it, using some of that natural weather-based imagery. Imagine a line like this. The golden glow of the lantern wasn't just bright. It held the quiet, resilient strength of a flame that had survived its own long storm. It acknowledges the struggle, but in a very poetic, non-threatening way.
I love that. And I particularly like the phrase resilient strength. That's inherently soothing, it's affirming, it shifts the focus away from the past pain and onto the present victory of just tendrance.
Right.
Or, alternatively, we could attach that memory to a quick kinetic feeling. Maybe when Elias is reflecting after he talks with Mara. Just something swift and internal.
Like a momentary flash of a physical memory.
Yeah, exactly.
We could have a phrase like, he remembered a feeling, a time when the tide had pulled him too far out, and this lamp had been the single, silent point of return.
Yes. That evokes the feeling of being overwhelmed and then finding safety, which is exactly the emotional state a listener is hoping to resolve. It validates their own struggles, but implicitly.
It's about anchoring that emotional truth quickly and effectively, all while maintaining that gentle flow. It seems like a quick, resonant sensory detail just achieves so much more than a long explanation here.
It really does. And that subtle integration elevates the emotional authority of the whole piece.
That kind of nuance, it requires such a deep attention to pacing, which actually brings us perfectly to the second point.
Mm-hmm.
To maximize the story's effectiveness as a tool for rest, the narrative has to maintain a continuous hypnotic rhythm. And that rhythm needs to be anchored firmly in specific sensory details, especially during those transition and solo walking sequences.
I completely agree. The hypnotic quality of script like this, it's built entirely on rhythm and, predictable sensory loops. This story does a great job setting up that gentle, repetitive rhythm at the beginning.
The steps, the swinging light, the breathing ocean.
Yes, that initial rhythm is the engine of the listener's relaxation. The problem isn't the rhythm itself, it's the disruption that's caused by the dialogue.
Which is necessary dialogue.
Oh, it's crucial. The weight of the story shifts to that conversation between Elias and Mara, where he explains his motivation, the purpose of the gentle light versus the mechanical lighthouse. But that dialogue requires cognitive processing.
Exactly. Even gentle dialogue forces a cognitive spike. The listener has to follow a back and forth, they have to internalize meaning, maybe even relate to the philosophy. That takes alertness.
And after that powerful explanation, and after Mara leaves, the story needs to ensure the return to that descriptive environmental pacing is just as rich and sustained, maybe even more sustained.
To gently ramp the listener back down toward sleep.
Yes. The risk is that the cognitive engagement doesn't fully dissipate before the end. The listener stays just a little too alert to drift off easily.
We need to actively build that lull back up, almost like creating a deceleration ramp that's much longer and more detailed than the acceleration ramp was at the start.
Building on that, the suggestion is to layer in more consistent, specific auditory and kinetic anchors during all the walking sequences, but especially after Mara leaves.
To keep the listener grounded purely in that tranquil physical movement and the sonic environment.
We need to make the movement itself the primary source of calm again. Let it overwhelm that cognitive spike that the dialogue created.
So we're aiming for repetition and texture that's almost meditative. In the initial walk, we could just focus more on the repetitive sounds to really maximize that hypnotic quality. The material mentions the light swinging softly and footsteps brushing through sand and shells. But we could extend that, linger on the visual and auditory feedback of the movement, the sift sound of the sand, maybe the predictable dull clink of the lantern's latch.
And we could push the repetition on the kinetic feeling, too. Think about just maximizing the word count devoted to describing the walk. Instead of moving so quickly from Mara left to the final reflections, we just linger.
Linger on the environment Elias is observing and moving through, forcing the listener's attention back onto their immediate, simple senses.
That's a powerful idea. After Mara leaves and Elias stays longer, that's a prime opportunity to sustain the texture of the soundscape.
Instead of quickly moving to his final wish for the listener, we could shift focus to sustained auditory details, like the ocean breathe, not just mentioning it, but really emphasizing the rhythmic, inhaled exhale of the waves.
Yes. Or the soft glow of the lantern warming the cool night air. Making sure these sustained, predictable textures replace the dialogue as the dominant, hypnotic feature for a longer beat.
That movement, the ocean breathing, it's a perfect sound loop for relaxation.
We need to spend more time there. Let the listener settle into that rhythm. Allow the intellectual meaning of the dialogue to fully recede before that final tuck-in starts. It makes sure the story is a truly effective vehicle for sleep, not just a beautiful narrative that ends a bit too quickly.
It's about leveraging that predictable, sustained sensory input to suppress the higher-level cognitive processing that the plot required. That definitely strengthens the utility of the piece. Okay, so let's look at the third and final element, how tightly the story connects to the listener right from the jump.
Right, audience alignment. This is really all about fulfilling its purpose. The story's core idea that people need a gentle, intentional light, not a huge automatic one, is just brilliant. It's so unique.
But we're delaying its introduction.
Exactly. While the introduction and the conclusion connect directly with the listener, I think integrating that unique thematic promise more tightly into the opening frame will maximize alignment and make sure the story fulfills its specific purpose immediately.
That unique angle is the reason someone would choose this story over, thousands of others. The current introduction uses successful, standard relaxation language, like, if your heart has been heavy.
Specific emotional relief that Elias's lantern represents. We miss the chance to hook the listener with the specific mechanism of their comfort.
I see. So the desire to maintain a universal tone might actually be overlooking the most powerful emotional hook you've already created. We should leverage that specificity right away to establish that unique contract with the listener.
The suggestion is to immediately ground the opening in the core metaphor of the lantern, that intentional, gentle, customized watching.
So elevate the feeling that this specific story is meant for the listener's unique moment of need. It immediately tells them, I know exactly why you're here, and this story offers something that others don't.
Right. My only question there would be, if we get too specific in the opening, do we risk alienating a listener who just clicked looking for general comfort? Does leading with the difference between a lighthouse and a lantern raise the cognitive bar too high, too soon?
That's a fair challenge, but I think the power of this piece is the metaphor. We have to trust that the listener who selected the Lantern Keeper is already looking for something gentle and specific. We're trading generic language for thematic specificity, and in this niche, that specificity translates directly to immediate audience trust.
So what would that look like? Well, we could suggest rewriting the opening frame to lead with that core concept. Something like, sometimes the large light is not enough. Tonight, we follow a gentle lantern meant specifically for the people on the shore, reminding them they're not alone.
That immediately elevates the introduction from just a general prompt to a real thematic promise. It establishes the emotional contract from the start.
And that promise has to be sealed in the final moments as well.
Of course.
In the closing tuck-in, we need to ensure the final imagery pulls directly from Elias's explanation to Mara. Bring that intentionality, that personalized watching, back to the listener.
So instead of just general warmth or safety, we make the closing imagery specific to the lantern's purpose and its philosophy, reinforcing the unique value of the story.
Exactly. For instance, we could use a final tuck-in line like, imagine that light now, not a sweeping beam, but a soft, intentional golden glow, reminding you that when you feel lost, it offers a moment of warmth and that someone somewhere is watching over the night for you.
That ties the specific narrative device, Elias's motivation, directly into the listener's immediate comfort mechanism. It makes the whole piece feel cohesive and hyper-focused on its unique goal.
The material already makes a strong case for this kind of personalized, gentle comfort. By sharpening the opening and closing to leverage that unique metaphor, we just make sure that promise is delivered upon immediately and sealed effectively at the end.
It strengthens the completeness and the focus of the whole thing without needing a single extra plot point.
It is a beautifully constructed piece already. The imagery is so vivid and gentle. These suggestions are really just about fine-tuning the emotional resonance and the pacing to make it the most powerful and effective sleep story it can possibly be.
Fantastic. So, to summarize the main actionable suggestions, first, consider subtly integrating Elias's past need for comfort through generalized sensory metaphors, like describing the resilience of the flame, to really strengthen the emotional resonance of his mission.
Second, focus heavily on sustained sensory detail and rhythmic pacing, particularly during those transitions and solo walking segments after the dialogue, to enhance the hypnotic flow and really guide the listener gently toward deep rest.
And finally, sharpen the introduction. Integrate that unique metaphor of the different kind of light much earlier to optimize the connection with the listener's immediate emotional needs. Establish that unique thematic contract right from the very start.
This material is exceptional, and with these adjustments, I think it'll become an even more powerful tool for comfort and rest. We genuinely want to help strengthen this, so we encourage you to refine it based on the critique, and please submit it back in again for another look.
Good luck with the revisions. Until next time, take care.